Today I thought I'd do a little bit of pastel demo just for change. So this is like week 3 of the portrait project. It started at the beginning of the month. This was one of the demos, the charcoal bit from a couple of weeks ago, and I've then started to add pastel, so I'll do a little bit more of that. So that was the first week. Second week, last week, was quick kind of oil sketches using a limited palette. So this was just using a black, a white, a cabin red and a yellow ochre. So the idea was that you could get something that it's not necessarily naturalistic, but it gives you a hint of tone, sort of a hint of skin tones and colours, and more particularly lights and darks. So that's one of the demos from last week. That was the other one of the others. So I'll make this the last week I kind of work on portraits, but obviously if you're working away and you want to keep going, do keep going. There's no desperate hurry about the projects. I thought next week I'll talk a little bit about textures and paint textures and how we might be able to sort of explore different textures, so that might be quite, and probably apply that to something more like a landscape. In a couple of weeks' time, the project is sort of derelict, so it's more of a theme. So that could be that we tie the textures in with the derelict theme, so that might be something to think about. So they were the next two kind of fairly short projects. I think I've planned a couple of weeks on each, but we can stretch them out a little bit if we want to. So that's that. Okay, so pastels. What I really like to use is the soft pastels, which are a bit like a kind of coloured chalk. So one of the difficulties I find is getting the sort of naturalistic skin tones. I'll get scrap paper just find out. What I'll do is just do it on here. So it's quite a good idea to maybe have a bit of scrap paper that you can just test the colours out on. So I find that sort of looking at them, they often appear slightly different when you start to put them down. And sometimes two that look fairly similar. You know, that one actually drawing it down looks a lot lighter to me than the first one. So it's quite good to have a little bit of scrap paper. They're quite a nice medium for things like portraits, I think, because it's not, you can get nice soft blends. And the other thing I want to have a quick look at is really looking at children and children's features and proportions. So one of the things about drawing children is quite often eyes appear quite big. And I think this child has got particularly big eyes, and I'll probably draw them even bigger than they really are. Quite often noses will be quite small with children. That's one of the sort of features, and I think these sort of proportions, like here to here and here to here and here to here, they're quite often a bit more sort of squashed up, really. And as we get older, those proportions draw out or lengthen. So that's one of the things that sort of show that, you know, to look out for. So with drawing something like this, what I tend to do is almost like just get a little bit of colour and tone everywhere to start with. So and particularly working, I generally get the darks in a little bit earlier, so I've got some shadows here, perhaps a little bit more shadow here. I'm not sure if it's this colour. Yeah, that would probably work quite well, maybe a little bit of it. And with the pastels, you can work them like that on their sides if they're these small ones. You can also actually get a broader mark or a thin mark just using the corner. So there's lots of different mark making you can do. I tend to, this is just ordinary paper, ordinary cartridge paper. So I like to just get that worked into the grain of the paper. And I would do the same with the coloured paper. Quite often it's quite nice to work with a coloured paper with pastels. And then you're working dark tones and light tones. And the light bits really stand out if you've got coloured paper. So that can work really nicely. But what I usually do either way is just get that first layer worked in. So you can use your fingers, it gets very messy. Or one of these paper blenders can be quite good. These are just literally like a rolled up piece of paper sharpened. These are really good for particularly getting little bits of pastel worked into corners and that sort of thing. So I can just kind of work that in there. And once I've got those colours in, I can then layer it up a bit more. So to me, she's slightly pinker here. I could put maybe that pink or a slightly stronger colour. And to get the naturalistic, or something approaching naturalistic mixing, I tend to sort of layer one colour over another. So I might pop that down, maybe put a bit of that over the top, and then blend that in. And then getting the lighter tones, because it's not too dark underneath, I should be able to draw some sort of lighter highlights in different areas. And again, I can blend that in either with fingers or the blender. Probably better to have another blender for the lighter colours. Sort of lip colours, obviously, you know, we've got pink lips, but I don't want to make them too strong, so I probably would start with a little bit of, perhaps a few different colours in there, perhaps a little bit of reds, and then perhaps some of these browns. And this is where I probably need to mix the colours a little bit. Kind of blend that together a little bit. And for sort of distinct edges, like sort of around her eyes, it's probably easier to use the pastel pencils for those sort of things. So I tend to always have like maybe a dark brown or a black, and then that can be quite good for just re-establishing things like eyelashes. I'll go a little bit darker as well. And the pupil and iris need to be a little bit darker. There's a bit of brown in there too, so I'll just add a little bit of brown. Like that. A little bit more flesh colour on the top eyelid. Again, the same here. A tiny bit stronger there. Perhaps a little bit of pencil just under there, just to establish that. Perhaps stronger shadows around her eyes here. So a little bit of brown, although this is going to be a bit too dark. But I can always draw some lighter tones in as well. So if I just work that in a bit to start with, then draw some slightly lighter colours into that. Just lighten that up a little bit. So actually that's kind of how it would work. I think when we get some, one thing, if we've got really bright colours, then it's quite nice to use a pencil just to get that, these sort of little shapes like that. You guys sharpen up little edges and shadows. If you've got a really light colour, sometimes it can be better to put like the really bright colours down first. If I'd had like a really dark bit here and then try and put lighter colours next to it all, and these can very quickly just pick up the dark and get muddy really. So I'm going to try and get the light colours in first. But yeah, that's a bit about pastels. Sometimes need to rub areas out, and I tend to quite often start with a brush and just lift out with the brush. Otherwise what happens is the pastel just clogs the paper and you can't get any more over the top. So although that's not looking too different, I should be able to put a lighter colour over the top if I wanted to, something like that. And that will then take. So in a way you can, to an extent, sort of layer them up and build colours. So if anybody wants to have a go at pastels, there's loads here that you're welcome to try. Yeah, as I say, mostly I've used the soft pastels, but one or two pencils too. Anybody got any questions? All good? Yeah. Okay, right, I'll let you go.